live audience here. Now, they've agreed to stay quiet during the conversations and the debate we're going to have here. No cheers, no boos, except right now when we introduce the candidates. Candidate one, Rob Saka. And Mara Costa.
The format tonight is simple. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for an opening statement. Questions will then be asked to both candidates and they will have 1 minute for an initial response. Our panel will then lead a follow-up discussion on that topic before moving on to the next question.
So let's get started. We flipped a coin and Maren Costa will go first with an opening statement.
Hello, I'm Maren Costa. I've lived in District 1 for 21 years and Seattle for 33 years. I've been a waitress and a grocery store clerk here. I'm raising my family here. And when Seattle became a tech town, I became a tech worker. In my 20 years as a senior leader in big tech, I gained extensive experience managing big teams, million-dollar budgets, solving big problems, and bringing rival teams together to get more done. Seattle is one of the most prosperous cities in the world, yet we're failing to make meaningful progress on key issues of public safety, homelessness, affordable housing, and climate change. I'm running because District 1 voters shouldn't have to accept more of the same failed policies. We need a more balanced approach. We can have police and alternative response. We can lead with compassion and refuse to tolerate harmful behavior. We can bring people inside while providing wraparound services. And as we prepare for climate change, we can create a city that we're proud to pass on to future generations. My opponent will try to mislead you tonight that I want to defund the police. That is false. I am the public safety candidate in this race, and I am proud to have the only public safety endorsement of the 911 dispatchers. There's also a reason why all 6 of our former opponents endorsed me and my campaign. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the, thank you for inviting me here tonight.
Rob Saka, please go ahead with your opening statement.
Thank you. Thank you. Is this thing on? Okay. So thank you, everyone, and good evening. My name is Rob Saka. I'm running for Seattle City Council in District 1. First off, thank you to the event organizers and hosts, the Seattle City Club, the GSBA, and South Seattle College, of course, as well. This is where my middle son, we had a co-op here, so I spent a decent amount of time here. So Rob Saka, running for Seattle City Council in District 1, like I mentioned. I'm a public school dad of 3, Air Force veteran, attorney, community safety advocate. I live in Delridge with my family. I'm the only one in this race, folks, the only one who has actual experience writing government policy and helping to pass law. And I've done that by serving on countless government commissions, including those to select the new Seattle Police Chief, redraw the King County Council districts, review and update the county constitution or charter, amongst other things. There are a lot of key differences between me and my opponent, although we do seem to agree on a fair amount as well. But now more than ever, change is needed in this city. I'm running to build an accountable, responsive government that centers progressive values and common sense. I want to normalize collaborating across differences, finding common ground, and ultimately getting stuff done. Stuff that works for all of us. City Council, divided. I built my whole personal life and my professional career off of bringing people together and getting stuff done. And I look forward and I ask for your vote.
All right, thank you to both of you. Tonight, our questions tonight are going to be guided by the voters. And a recent Crosscut Elway poll asked Seattle about the top issues the next city council should tackle. Homelessness was number 1.
And we want to ask the audience to keep applause until the end of the debate. Homelessness. It's a complex issue. Seattle declared a homeless emergency in November of 2015. We're coming up on the 8th anniversary of that declaration. And some would argue after spending hundreds of millions of dollars here in the city, we've seen little or no visible improvement. How do you address the complex issue of homelessness, and what specific and underlying specific policies or initiatives do you have that are new or something that was tried before but did not succeed?
Rob, go ahead, go
Yeah.
first.
And so it's an excellent question. Homelessness. I've knocked on thousands of doors throughout this campaign, and I know it's on a lot of people's minds and their hearts as well. I'm also someone who has overcome the foster care system, someone who overcame public housing. So I know through the help of community, I am here today. So I know what it's like to struggle and experience housing instability. Like many of the people I hope to help, I'm here to address the root causes of homelessness. At a high level, it's poverty. More specifically, it's lack of access to affordable housing. We need to build a ton of affordable housing in this city and build quickly and add density and grow and reform our zoning laws to do so. And make it easier to build by streamlining and improving the permitting process. But folks, we're not going to root cause only our way out of this crisis. Unlike my opponent, who does not support encampment cleanups, I do support encampment cleanups that connect people with shelter and services.
Okay, thank you. Maren.
Homelessness is first and foremost a housing problem. The number one reason why people fall into homelessness is being one paycheck short of making rent. We need to bring people inside and give people the wraparound services that they need to be successful. And they need to be tailored to the individual so that we aren't giving somebody a hotel voucher in Renton when they have a job in Everett. We need to have tailored solutions that we are able to deliver to individuals when we bring them inside. We cannot accept sweeps. They are ineffective, expensive, and inhumane. I've heard estimates of $37 million on sweeps last year. We could have been building tiny home villages and bringing people inside. We need to stop the sweeps.
Just to follow up, just because where's the money going to come from for affordable housing? You both are talking about that. The King County Regional Homelessness Authority estimated could be 11.5 billion over the next 5 years in the King County, up to 22.5 billion. Just doing simple math, that's over $250,000 per person. Who's going to pay for that affordable housing in the city of Seattle specifically? Oh, actually it'll be Mara go first.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry,
Thank
we're
you.
going to
No
alternate
worries.
now.
We'll follow you guys. We know we're heading into a public or a deficit. In 2025, we're going to be $230 million short. So we need to do everything we can to make sure we're spending our money efficiently, but we also need to commit to raising progressive revenue so that we can solve our problems. We're a big city with big problems, and they aren't going to be free.
Rob?
On encampment cleanups really quick, because my opponent has said there are no instances where
But we're talking about affordable housing right now.
but there
Who's
are
gonna
no
pay for it?
instances where she said she supports sweeps of encampments. We've tried that in 2020 and 21. It doesn't work. It's not one or the other. We can do better for our unhoused neighbors by connecting them with tiny homes, yes, hotel spaces, RV safe lots. There's not just one thing, and I think we agree on that. On the budget, my starting point is operating within existing city budget. And we can talk more about progressive revenues in a moment, but my starting point is operating within his existing city budget.
I just got a text. We're going to be interactive here. This is a question that just came to me. Many cities in our region and other states are passing laws prohibiting encampments in public spaces. Now, they believe it's legal as long as the prohibition is defined by time, place, and manner, not a blanket prohibition. Should Seattle do the same?
Rob, go first.
So other cities across the state and other parts of the country in the Pacific Northwest have done something similar. I think we need to look at the legality of that first off. As I am a lawyer, but I'm no expert in this. We do need to study the legality of that and put reasonable restrictions. If we do, put reasonable restrictions around time, place, and manner. Make sure it's tied to a specific public health threat, for example, or potential public safety threat. So it's not just broad and vague. But other cities have found some success in doing that. Other cities have not. I don't know if there's a clear answer, yes or no, but I do know we need to do better for our unhoused neighbors and turning in on our unhoused and unsheltered neighbors and turning our back on people and pretending people aren't living and suffering and dying sadly in the streets is not an effective policy solution.
Right, Maren?
So homelessness, you know, being unhoused and a human should not be illegal. People don't have anywhere to go. Encampments are a failure of city government. We shouldn't have encampments. We shouldn't be having to decide whether or not encampments can be on public grounds. We need to bring people inside, and we can do it. Houston has used a housing first model. They have cut their homelessness population in half. I don't think we should even be worrying about where we're going to move people outside. We need to bring people inside.
All right, thank you. Wanting to move to some public safety issues, and we're going to talk right now about the number of homicides in Seattle so far this year. It's already exceeded last year's total, including 2 people shot to death near Alki Beach in May alone. I want you to tell me one policy you would propose to address violent crimes in Seattle, especially crimes involving gun violence. And Rob, I'll have you go first.
So I live in Del Ridge, and gun violence is a challenge afflicting the whole city. But there are certain communities, including Del Ridge, that are bearing the brunt of the gun violence crises. And my plan on public safety, unlike my opponent, who seems to think that the 2020 vote to defund the police was a good idea based off of an Elway crosscut poll in October of 2020 that said only 20% of Seattle residents thought it was a good idea. My opponent still thinks it was a good idea, or at a minimum, not a mistake. It's dangerous. That's in part why we're in the current state of affairs. There's 3 more months left, and we already eclipsed last year's totals, as we just learned. So I'm here to hire more police, empower them to effectively carry out their public safety mandate. I want to restore good old-fashioned community-oriented policing, where we get officers out of their patrol cars and into foot patrols and bike patrols and emphasis patrols in certain areas like Elki, that can actually serve as a deterrent and help build trust.
All right, thank you. Maren, go ahead.
So we need a comprehensive public safety plan. I'm very encouraged by the mayor and the plan to set up the 3rd department that we have been waiting for. Seattle has been asking for. It's highly popular. We need to get that 3rd department stood up so that we can move some of the load off of our armed officers, and then they have more bandwidth to deal with the calls that we really need them on, where they're dealing with an armed offender. So that is one big piece to ensuring. Yes, we need more cops. Yes, we need better cops. We need to keep our bar high. We need to keep accountability high, but we will need armed police. That's an important piece of public safety. But if we build this 3rd department, we're going to have more bandwidth for officers where they're needed. We also need to deal with gun violence. I'm proud that I have a 5 out of 5 rating from the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. I've met with several people that are working in organizations like Community Passageways, and they are doing incredible work, and we need to double down on that.
And Maren, a follow-up for you, just what Rob just said about defund police. What would you want to say to address his comments?
I addressed that in the opening statement because I knew it was coming. I don't want to defund the police. I've never said that. I've been consistent the entire time. So,
Rob, go ahead.
Well, look, the only thing that my opponent has been consistent about during this whole election is her inconsistency on public safety. She was for defunding police before she was against it. During the MLK Candidate Labor Forum in May or June of this year, the question was asked. There's receipts. Question was asked: Was the 2020 vote by the Seattle City Council to pledge to defund the police by 50%, cut their budget by 50%, was it a mistake? I said no. And my opponent said yes. And then then I hear some rationale about, well, I'll let her explain the rationale, but
That's time. Do you want to offer any other explanation or
he's
move on?
mischaracterizing it. The question was, at the time, was it right? And at the time, 53% of Seattle was demanding it, and the nation was demanding it. I wasn't in city council, but I would expect city council to stand up and take a bold stand when more than the majority, like when a majority of the city is asking for that. That's what we should expect our city council.
So want to move on now. Seattle voters surveyed by Crosscut say affordable housing is among the most important issues as they decide who gets their vote.
You've both named affordable housing as campaign priorities, and you both have similar ideas of how to make Seattle a more affordable place to live, like by cutting red tape to make permitting faster and promoting mixed use developments. Could you each outline other ways you plan to make housing more affordable for people in Seattle and how this differs from your opponent?
I missed the last part of the.
Could you each outline other ways that you plan to make housing more affordable and how this differs from your opponent?
And Maren, you'll go first for us.
So we need to increase housing of all types. When we increase supply, we bring costs down. We know that's a fact. When cars were hard to find during COVID, the price of used cars went way up. When the new cars came back in, cars went back down. So we know that if we just increase the supply of any type of housing, we will bring the prices down. I don't know if, like, I think a difference would be with me and my opponent is, because I'm trying to think, I think we agree on a lot of things on this one, but the comp plan is coming up to the city. They have an alternative 6, which is the most forward-looking. It's the only plan that actually lets us look at the amount of housing we would actually need, and it lets housing grow with jobs and population instead of capping housing when we don't cap jobs and population.
All right, Rob.
Yeah, so it's very clear that my opponent and I, we do agree on the need, high level, to add growth and density. We agreed on the need imperative to build as quickly as possible, in part by streamlining the permitting process, et cetera. I think where we probably differ, and I'm coming at this from a place of personal lived experience, is that as we build and grow, we need to make sure we don't displace and push out people who've been there for a long time. So I support strong anti-displacement strategies, things like right of first return and first refusal, relocation assistance, community land trust, things like that. Also on the comp plan, another sort of area of contrast, I'm strongly inclined to support comp plan number 5, which is a big, bold, ambitious plan to add density and growth. My opponent just got done saying she supports comp plan number 6, which exists, as I understand it, only in the papers. Like all the work has already been done, and comp plan 5 is an option currently being considered. I'm not here to unwind stuff.
All right.
I'm here to build upon and make better.
Thank you.
Candidate Saka, you have mentioned that you want to increase investment in workforce housing and market rate housing where it makes sense. How do you determine where market rate housing will make sense in the communities that you're going to serve if you're elected?
How do I determine?
When market rate housing does make sense in the communities of District 1? You said, yeah. I'm sorry. I was saying candidate Saka has expressed that you want to increase investment in workforce housing, but you've also indicated that you can make market rate housing density where it makes sense. How do you determine where it makes sense?
Yeah, so we need to invest and encourage development from a city funding and investment standpoint in all 3 tiers. But I think focusing our efforts on a city investment standpoint on the lower 2 tiers, so low income, middle income, kind of workforce housing, if you will, as well. As we build and grow, yes, we need some like market rate housing as well. That's always going to be an option. But we need to encourage. So I support a carrot and a stick approach, working with developers to require certain allocations of both, and then incentivize them for building low-income apartments and housing as well.
Well, you just mentioned investment. Again, that's the key word for me about who's paying for all this. Given what you just talked about, who's paying for this investment? And does the city have the money to do it?
Yeah, so my starting point is, again, operating with an existing city budget. I think we need to, I'm calling for an independent third-party audit of entire city budget and spending, make sure that things today are Our spending today is tied to current priorities of this council and this mayor, not the council and mayor of 10, 15 plus years ago. We need to better harmonize and streamline services and avoid redundancies and duplication of efforts. We need to make sure we need to bake in performance targets in all of our contracting, just to make sure we are getting the most taxpayers are getting the most bang for our buck. Then let's explore public-private partnerships. Then let's explore other government funding options like the county, state, and federal. And then now also let's talk about progressive revenue.
Want to give you a chance. Go ahead, Maren.
I was at Amazon for 15 years. We had a leadership principle called frugality. Every dollar wasted is a dollar not spent on customers. I also want to make sure we are spending our money wisely. I would ask the mayor to bubble up from his directs and then directs and let people on the ground bubble up 10 ways. It could be anonymous, 10 ways your department can save money. I think that would be a great first step. But we do need to raise progressive revenue. We're not going to suddenly find $230 million sitting in the budget. And maybe we can go into some of those ways at some point. I'm sure we will.
I'm gonna move to transportation because that has had a special importance in District 1, which struggled with the West Seattle Bridge closure for 2.5 years. So we're going to start with a question from our audience. And that question is, what is your vision for light rail coming to West Seattle? And Rob, you can go first.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of work already put into the light rail. And I live in Delridge, and every last one of the plans impacts multiple areas throughout West Seattle, and including Delridge. There are a lot of businesses and homes and daycares and things that are going to be displaced. So that's why I support anti-displacement strategies, because I come from these communities. But that doesn't mean I'm here to undo or unwind existing work, unlike it sounds like what my opponent might want to do with the comp plan, this mythical Plan 6. I support, I don't, there's a number of options being considered, but we need light rail, and we need connectivity from West Seattle to the rest of the city, and need to have the free flow of people and information in and out. And we need to expand our public transportation options and services, and light rail is exactly how, well, it's a key factor into how we're going to get there.
Maren, same question, light rail.
So light rail is going to be incredibly expensive and quite disruptive. So I know we've done a lot of work, but we really need to make sure that we are bringing a valuable, usable, accessible asset to our community. And we need to make sure that the businesses and especially the businesses and the homes that we displace are well compensated for. My sister is a small business owner in West Seattle. She was under eminent domain for a moment until now the preferred plan is moved a block over. So she might be spared, but there's a daycare center at Delridge that will cost millions to set up somewhere else. And the amount of money that they're being offered is not sufficient for them to set up. If and when we do have light rail, we need to make sure that we're connecting the light rail with bike paths and walking paths and buses to make sure that we have a connected system that works for everyone.
You talked about displacement, which is going to be a huge issue because we don't have a plan going forward. So given the choice, if you had an option where fewer people, businesses, residents were displaced versus a more expensive alternative, which one would you go to? Displacing people for the better, or for the bigger good, pay for more?
Maren, go first.
I think when we're talking about transit and these huge investments that people are going to be using for the next 100 years, we need to make sure we are compensating people, but we also need to make sure we're doing the right thing for the next 100 years. When I-5 went plowing through whatever neighborhoods it did when it went plowing through, I mean, we are now still driving on I-5. We had the tunnel project that we did. In each of these cases where we're doing such an expensive and disruptive plan, we just really need to make sure that we're looking forward, but compensating people appropriately.
And Rob, go ahead.
I would respectfully reframe that question. The whole essence of my campaign, folks, is it's not just one thing. It's not. We need to move away from these narratives that in binaries that put things as either or. Multiple complex, nuanced, urgent things can and must be true at the same time. And no more clear of an example can I think of right now than the displacement versus costs We need to work collaboratively with communities and other government programs and funding sources to figure out the best options here. It's not one or the other.
Right. I want to talk about pandemic recovery because our region is still recovering from the effects of the pandemic. How will you support small businesses in your district that are still struggling? Maren, go first with that.
Small businesses are just constantly under duress. I mean, I know like I said, my twin sister is a small business owner. I have so many friends in West Seattle, and that's in District 1. That's part of what is so amazing about District 1 is our vibrant, many, small businesses. And it's always hard. COVID was even harder, and we're still in the shadow of the pandemic. We need to make sure that we continue supports for small businesses. We need to make sure that we have the right size of spaces for people to open up new small businesses, make sure that we're helping them with the technical aspects of setting up a small business, the financial aspects of setting up a small business. We need to streamline the process in general of opening up a small business and support our small businesses so that they can stay open, and also public safety comes in there because they're also dealing with a lot of vandalism and broken windows, and we can do a better job as a city supporting them there.
Rob, same question.
Small businesses across the city are suffering, are reeling. And I was actually at the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce luncheon last week, I believe, in their annual State of the Port. And I got to meet many small business owners personally, many of which I've already met before. But the number one thing that we can do from a city perspective is take meaningful progress on the public safety situation. As your council member, I'm not here to legislate menu changes and codify things like that. The number one thing I think we can do is to create the conditions where customers want to show up and support these small businesses, where the workers of the small business establishments want to show up and feel comfortable showing up. And when you talk about defunding the police, that doesn't actually help us get there. When you defend the defund, that doesn't get us there. And then when people are suffering from debilitating drug dependency issues left untreated on the street in front of small businesses, that's why I support the drug use law. That doesn't help us get there.
So you're talking a lot about taxes indirectly right here. How do you support small business? The city makes a lot of money in taxes off small business and large business. We had the Jumpstart Seattle tax, and now we're facing next year in 2025 a lower tax revenue. Let's just put that. That's what the city is predicting. Where is this extra money going to come from? In your mind, and I'm going to start with Rob. Where is the extra money to support any kind of proposal to help small business without taxing the people you're actually trying to help?
Great question. And I've been entirely clear and consistent, unlike my opponent, on a few important public safety things throughout. But where's the money going to come from? Again, my starting point is a refresher is to make sure we operate within existing city budget. Let's also explore public-private partnerships for certain opportunities as well. And because issues like homelessness, it's not a Seattle-only problem. We need to be looking, it's a county problem, it's a state problem. We need to be looking to other sources to help address it. I think my opponent and I do agree on the need to, the new progressive revenue report, the preserving the jumpstart tax, exploring the vacancy lot tax, amongst other things, but yeah.
Maren, go ahead.
I think this is probably a pretty clear differentiator between my opponent and me. My opponent is funded by his big businesses and CEOs and billionaires. And so he's going to be unwilling to say that we should perhaps increase the jumpstart tax or perhaps create a capital gains tax, an extreme capital gains tax at the municipal level. These are going to be key tools to help us fund our city. We can look around and see that we have a ton of money in our city. It's just hard to bring it back in because we have an upside down tax code.
Just real quickly, I want a quick answer on this one. Universal basic income, which was tried in Tacoma. Do you support that idea of trying it in Seattle?
Go to Maren first.
I there is a lot of data to support universal basic income as being something that could work. I think as we move into the world where AI becomes increasingly more smart and it starts taking away jobs, we're already seeing this wealth gap. AI will increase that and it will kill jobs. So we're going to need to figure out how we're going to take care of people. I would be interested in a pilot.
Rob, how about you?
Yeah, I don't know where the money's going to come from, but it's absolutely worth exploring. Um, Unlike my opponent, who recently said during another debate that the number one thing she wants to be remembered for in 4 years was raising more revenue, not making more progress on public safety, not action on homelessness, not addressing the affordability crisis, but raising more revenue. No, I'm here for the former, folks. But yeah, where's the money going to come from? I was door knocking yesterday, and someone and they expressed a profound concern and desire for the federal government to step up because they are uniquely positioned to help fund. They can literally print money. I'm curious to learn where's this money going to come from for that.
Want to stay on the business issue and talk about something that's a problem citywide, vacant buildings. We have so many vacancies. I want to hear one idea from each of you, and I'd like it to be something unique, not that we've heard before, about how to fill some of these empty spaces. Maren, you can go first.
I think this would be an opportunity for both small businesses and um, and housing and culture and arts. I know there was a group that was putting together something to put into the Banana Republic building where you could have many different little kiosks and musicians and art and food, food stands. So I would love to see something like we've seen in, like maybe on the Embarcadero in San Francisco, for example.
Rob?
Yeah, so how do we fill the vacant buildings? Well, one thing, and this ties back to the revenue, question, that the recurrent theme here. One thing I think we need to strongly explore, and I've been consistent about, and it sounds like me and my opponent definitely agree on the need to explore a vacancy tax as one to help raise revenue, and two to make sure we better utilize underutilized spaces, if you will. Also, we can and must do things to make sure we have a more culturally relevant and thriving environment. And yeah, I also support, making sure we have artist space in some of these vacant spaces, and galleries and things like that. We have a very robust arts and cultural, scene here in Seattle. We need to make sure more people are exposed to that. But more people aren't going to be exposed to that if they don't feel safe to come to Seattle. And we need to do better on that front as well.
Rob, what do you think about turning some of these vacant buildings into housing?
I think we need to explore that. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely worth exploring.
Any incentive idea how to do that?
Pardon me?
Incentives. Is it across either one of your minds about how to incentivize something like that?
And how to incentivize
Turning
turning?
turning vacant buildings into
Yeah,
residents?
yeah. Well, need to work with the developer community, need to work with the real estate community, need to work with like homelessness rights advocates, to figure out the best way forward. But absolutely, let's explore it.
I want to give Maren a chance to respond to that too, turning some of these vacant buildings into housing.
It is expensive to convert buildings, so that is something we will need to consider. I would love to convert rather than tear down and rebuild, just from a carbon footprint and just a waste factor. But if we're going to expect people to, put that expense into converting an office building into a livable space, there's a lot of changes that need to go into that. It's going to be expensive. We're going to need to figure out a way as a city that we can support that if that's what we want to have happen.
We want to move on to some policing matters. Obviously, it's a lightning rod issue in the city. We talked about
Sorry,
defunding the police. Can you hear me? Okay.
Maybe just start over.
Okay, I'm saying we're going to move into some policing issues. Obviously, you talked about defunding police. There's always a revenue issue there, but also there has to be a balance, many say, between enough officers and what they should be doing versus alternatives and how to pay for those alternatives, maybe coming out of the policing budget. Do you support the idea of alternatives responses coming out of a policing budget, incentivizing those kind of responses, or as what the mayor's been talking about, trying to raise the number of officers we have to a historical level of 1,400.
And we'll go Rob first.
Yes, I support the mayor's plan on public safety to hire and restore our officer staffing to 1,400, 1,500 deployable officers. Today, we're grossly understaffed and under-resourced. How do we get there? Defund. It doesn't work. Defund doesn't work. It chased out the first Black female police chief we've ever had in this city. On her heels, we've seen record numbers of officers resign and leave the force. Why? They didn't feel supported, nor should they. And I understand that. So we need to hire and keep the existing officers and the allocations for those roles within the police department, and not pull and take and from unknown alternatives. By the way, just because we make sure we hire more officers because people expect better response times, doesn't also mean we can and must invest in civilian-led responses. It's not one or the other. Multiple complex things can and must be true.
Maren.
I support the mayor's plan. I do take some issue with the allocated amount of money. We are a city that is in desperate need of having this alternative response. It's one of the best ways we can improve public safety in our city. The mayor's plan allocates $5 million to alternative response. And just as a point of comparison, we have $239 million for officers, and that's on top of already existing investments. I don't care where the money comes from, but $5 million doesn't sound like a bold plan. And that's what we need right now. As a city, we need a bold plan. And because we can look around and see that this is a big problem, and Seattle tends to like kick things out there and maybe pilot it, and then it doesn't, not fully fund it, and then it doesn't work, and we say, oh, look, it didn't work. Let's really get behind this. We have enough data from other cities to know that this works.
When it comes to policing alternatives, Maren, you've said that we're overly reliant on armed officers. I just want to dive a little bit deeper into these alternatives.
Sorry, what?
Overly reliant
yes,
on
yes.
armed officers. So just give me an alternative and how you see it working day in, day out. Go ahead.
Yep, I think, the defund, what happened after defund when we did lose officers and we're low down now and we'd like to rehire 400, and it's hard to hire. Nobody's really able to hire officers right now. The armed services are down. The younger generation just isn't signing up for this job. We need to figure out what it'll take to bring in the younger generation. Is it a more flexible schedule? Is it being more connected to your community? We need to figure that out. But we are feeling the pain now of the fact that we had one tool in our tool belt, and when we lost part of that tool, now we're struggling. We should have had alternative response stood up a long time ago so that it wasn't as painful when when we get to this case where now nobody's able to hire officers.
So as an example, like what would be an example, like social workers going out, or what would be an idea that you think?
Yeah, like a civilian response. I don't like to call it civilian response because it's and I don't want to say alternative response because that both of those sort of take away from what we're talking about. These are skilled professionals who understand what the need is, and they're trained to be able to go out and deal with these calls, whether it's person down, wellness check, some of the things that we can offload, that safely offload onto this new department.
The previous council, 2 or 3 years ago, used the term proviso, where they're targeting funding from the budget, which is primarily your job, for specific things within the police department. You can spend it on this, you can't spend it on that. What is your philosophy going forward, specifically with this police department, on how their budget is spent? Do you want to be a micromanager of the police department on how its money being spent? Or do you want to leave that to the chief and the mayor?
We'll have Rob go first.
Yeah, so I'm here to work with this mayor and through the police chief to hire more officers, make sure they have the tools, resources, and training they need to be successful, to help, to drive enhanced transparency and trust building measures throughout the department, and set and enforce the highest standards of excellence and professionalism in the communities where police operate, and swiftly hold them accountable if they don't do their job right. But I'm here to work with the mayor to do that. And yes.
Very good. And we want to move now into some district issues.
Starting next year, District 1 will include several new neighborhoods, including Soto and Pioneer Square. How do you plan to get to know and respond to the unique needs of these communities? Candidate Costa, we could start with you.
I've already been going out to meet so many different groups, neighborhood groups, nonprofits, organizations doing amazing work, small businesses, and then just knocking on doors. I think I've knocked on every door in South Park. It's easy to do because there's not that many doors, and I love the neighborhood. I would want to make sure that I have a very open door policy so that people can come and talk to me. But I also want to make sure that I am making myself available so that it's not just one-way street, come to the castle. Not everybody is available to come down to City Hall between the hours of 9 and 5. We need to make sure that people who are on a swing shift or a night shift and who maybe don't have a car can easily access FaceTime with their representative. So I would love to do rolling office hours in different neighborhoods and make sure that I'm available to the people who would want to talk to me.
Rob.
Yeah, so this new district is tremendous and I love it. And it's a vibrant, diverse district, and it includes West Seattle, South Park, Pioneer Square, Soto, and Georgetown. Those 5 neighborhoods, we are one collective whole. And I'm here to make no mistake, folks, I'm here to represent the whole district. Not just one group or neighborhood or interest. And I've been going up and I've been showing out, and I've had the privilege and the pleasure of showing up to various, by door knocking at people's homes, door knocking and going to various community events in South Park and visiting nonprofits. This morning I visited the Lifelong Food Bank in Georgetown. They do tremendous work and they help support organizations across this district, including the West Seattle Food Bank. So I have a history of building durable, thriving relationships across diverse communities. Will continue that if elected. And another thing I would love to do is set up a field office somewhere in this district. Maybe it's in Georgetown. Maybe it's in the Junction. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But rather than have people show up at City Hall, they can show up to the field office.
All right, I want to move to this. Some of the people in the audience tonight submitted questions in advance, and we have a selection to put to our candidates. One thing somebody wants to know is what the first thing you're going to do and work on if you end up taking office. What's priority 1? Maren?
Wow, there's so many priorities. I think, listening to the district, we want to see progress on public safety. That is the #1 thing, public safety and homelessness. And when you take a bite out of homelessness, you also take a bite out of public safety. So maybe it's bringing people inside, making sure that we have mental and behavioral health resources, substance use disorder, diversion treatment. That would be a great first step. That's kind of huge. And so I want to sort of give you a bite-sized thing that I would also love to do that I think is actually accomplishable in a short amount of time, would be to set up climate resiliency centers in every neighborhood so that everyone has a safe place to go in an extreme weather event. So schools, libraries, community centers should all be set up with backup power, air filtration, and heat pump air conditioning.
Good. Rob?
Number 1 thing I will focus on if elected, it's those 3 things: affordability, homelessness, and public safety. Public safety. I think we have a long way to go to rebuild some public trust and confidence in the police. And that recent SPD officer's crass comments and sensitive comments towards that poor woman who was killed by a police vehicle, that demonstrates that we have a long way to go to reform our police. But yes, we need police. And I'm here to provide a more thoughtful, balanced approach to public safety that recognizes, here we go, ride along with me in this journey, please. recognizes the importance of policing and enforcement, reform and officer accountability, and civilian-led responses or alternatives to police, if you will. We can't just knock down one of those pillars, whether it's policing and enforcement and expect the whole thing to hang together. Public drug use is something to build upon. I support the law, unlike my opponent, I support the recent law to adopt existing state law on public drug use. We need to do better for people suffering from these debilitating drug dependency issues.
Another question came from our audience. It was similar to something I saw on the West Seattle blog, which I thought was pretty representative about being confident that you're going to represent everybody. And this person writes, I'm tired of out of touch elites representing West Seattle. Please tell me what in your background would help me to believe that you can empathize with those of us considered low income and underserved. What in your background?
Maren, go first.
So in my background, I was a user experience designer, and the whole job of a user experience designer is to listen, empathize, understand, walk in the shoes of, and then invent solutions to solve problems and involve people in those solutions to make sure that those solutions actually work for the people that are going to be using them. So my 25-year career has prepared me for that exact job. That is something that I find is ingrained in me now. I can't do anything. I can't do things any other way.
Rob?
Yeah, about me, it's not just one thing. I have a big tech background, and I'm proud of it. We share a big tech background. But I think the separator for me is, look, before law school, I also served this country in uniform for 10 years. I served our country in uniform. I've served our community in various government boards and commissions. I've served our other communities on various nonprofit boards and commissions. I didn't start showing up a year or two before I decided to run. Also, I think the specific call of the question is, how are we going to empathize with people from low-income backgrounds? How? Folks, I come from one of those backgrounds. I'm cut from that same cloth. Recall, I'm someone who, through the help of great government programs and community, I'm someone who overcame the foster care system, public housing, free reduced lunch, all those things. I know what it's like to be down on your luck. And I'm coming at it from personal experience, community experience, civic experience, and lived experience.
Another question from someone in this district. What do you think are the 3 biggest issues facing Seattle today? Maren, you can go first.
Public safety, homelessness, and affordable housing.
Do you want to expand on it? Maybe one of them, why you think it's the biggest issue?
Public safety for District 1, I think, is, out on the doors. That's what I hear most often. People in District 1, there's homelessness, but there's more homelessness it's definitely homelessness in Pioneer Square and Soto and Georgetown, South Park. But public safety seems to, even still in all of those neighborhoods as well, come up top for them as the number 1 thing. So I think we really need to address that.
Rob, 3 things, the biggest issues facing Seattle today.
Top 3 issues: public safety, homelessness, and affordability, more specifically housing affordability. And I'll expand, we talked a little bit about all these, but I'll expand on something that we didn't quite cover, and that is the public drug use debate. I support the city adopting existing state law to create an option. It doesn't require, creates an option to prosecute people for open public drug use. I've been telling people, as a dad of 3 young kids, when I want to go to the Elastica Junction to visit some small businesses, I shouldn't be having to do gymnastics over people and paraphernalia. We're not doing good for people suffering from these drug dependency issues when we live and let live. That's why I supported it, and my opponent does not. Then I went and testified in favor of it.
This is a very simple question. I'm really interested in how you're going to answer this one. You just talked about public safety as the number 1 concern. Is there any place in your district you would not walk at night?
You would not walk What, alone?
Is there any place in District 1 you would not walk at night?
Lauren, go first. Any place you
Any
wouldn't walk
place,
alone?
so regarding public safety, is there any place in District 1 you would not walk at night?
Walk
Maybe
at
even in the
night.
daytime?
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think I would walk at night in the green belt on the, above the Duwamish.
Like above
No.
Alki there, that green belt?
Sorry, what?
Above Alki Beach, the canyon there?
No, the green belt that's above the Duwamish. So as you
Okay.
go along Marginal Way.
Okay.
There's trails through there, and I don't think I would go through there at night.
Yeah, that's one place. Rob?
I went to 13 different K through 12 schools growing up. 13. All of them exclusively Title I schools for kids like myself at the time, free reduced lunch. So I've lived in a lot of places growing up, and I've been in, and let me acknowledge my privilege also as a male, showing up at night. My personal sense of safety and security looks different than people who don't look
So
like
I'm
me.
going to ask you again, is there any place you would not walk at night?
No, there's no place. Well, and not from a public safety standpoint, in the
No, I'm talking
traditional
about a public
sense,
safety.
it would be lack of. There's a lot of district. I've walked all over this district. There's a lot of inequity in our sidewalks. So not necessarily because I'm scared of some sort of crime threat, but because of the lack of sidewalk infrastructure that exists. And at night, I can only imagine. The little things, folks. I'm here to focus on the little things. Little things.
I want to get to another question from a District 1 viewer who worries that more housing isn't making housing more affordable. They're seeing luxury apartment buildings go up, pricing longtime residents out. So the question is, how would you make sure that there's a good mix that meets the needs of all District 1 residents? And Maren, you can go first.
So we absolutely do need all types of housing. We need to make sure we have affordable housing. We need to make sure we have housing that is a percentage of your income. So 30% of your income, if you make zero, you pay zero. What we do know, and there was a recent Forbes article out about this, like we do, and I mentioned the used cars earlier, we do know that no matter what kind of housing we build, even if it's luxury housing, we will bring the cost of housing down. And that's why I would want to make sure we get out of our way. And we have a chance to build housing, let's build housing. And then we always make sure, we can always make sure that we are making, the affordable housing available as well, and make sure that we have the funding to do it. And if we don't raise revenue, we're going to have trouble funding these programs that we all want to see and that we'll all feel better once we actually have them in place.
Right, same question for you, Rob.
Housing that meets the needs. Well, we need to build, grow, add density, reform the zoning laws. Again, things we've kind of talked about, and expand the variety of housing options for people. And again, focusing those efforts from a city funding and investment standpoint on the lower two tiers. Market rate housing will come. So we need a variety of options. And also, as I mentioned earlier, kind of alluded to earlier, I support both the carrot and stick approach for developers, working with developers. Mandatory, a mixture of mandatory, requirements for new affordable housing options, and then incentivizing them to actually do the right thing. But we also need to change the cost structure and economics of it. Sometimes I was door knocking recently, and someone told me right next door their house tore down, and the developers built, and it was supposed to be affordable, and then they paid the premium, and instead it's a market rate housing, and into the pot this other money went. We need to change the dynamics and market structure so that less of that happens.
Good, thank you. Now we're going to move to another question.
Okay, we're going to move into closing statements because our time is running out. So each candidate will get 60 seconds to make their remarks. And since Maren, we started with you in the opening statements, we're going to start with Rob.
Thank you. So change is needed now more than ever. And Seattle is at a critical crossroads. We can elect more of the same, or we can elect a new, better approach to all these issues. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their own neighborhoods and communities. And we're not there yet. There was a comic book store in West Seattle yesterday, vandalized twice. There was a vape shop that was vandalized 7 times or something like in the last few weeks. It's out of hand. Our city doesn't need another inconsistent, unreliable council member. Our city deserves better. We don't need another activist with a megaphone. You deserve better. Again, I'm the only one in this race who has actually written government policy and helped to pass law. I fought to keep our streets safe, and I fought to reform our justice
Okay,
system.
Rob, Mara.
District 1 deserves an experienced leader who has the proven ability to listen, build trust, champion evidence, not ideology, and deliver results. Someone who has not just goals, but plans and can talk about how they're going to fund them. That's what I've been doing for 25 years. That's what I hope you've heard from me here tonight, and that's what you can expect from me on City Council. But ultimately, this campaign is about community, and it's our community and the amazing unstoppable power we have when we come together as a community to get things done. I'm proud to have the endorsements of all 6 of my former opponents, including Phil Tavel, Preston Anderson, and Stephen Brown. I'm also endorsed by King County Democrats, the Stranger, MLK Labor Council, Seattle Dispatchers Guild, the Bus Drivers Union, and dozens of labor unions, organizations, and community leaders. I'm honored to have earned first place in the primary. I hope to earn your vote in November, and I hope to serve you in City Hall. Thank you.
And with those closing statements, we end our first City Council district debate. Thank you so much to both candidates for discussing these important issues. It's finally time for our live audience so they can show some appreciation for the candidates.